Um, so today is another day that's kind of a special day. Uh, Baba Vanga, if you read my thing on Substack here, hey Calvin, there is like a grand sextile that is happening when Sagittarius rises. So it happened yesterday. It'll happen again today. I think it'll actually happen a little bit sooner today. Right now, as we have Libra rising, so we have this grand air trine from Mars, Uranus. It's not as tight today, and Pluto, Mars is starting to move out of the kind of tight conjunction. Neptune and Mercury are trining. So when Sagittarius rises, we have the grand sextile. Hey Mary, hey Kate, hey Dee, Bexma, hey Deborah. So this is really highly unusual. Grand sextiles are extremely rare. Because what has to happen is all the planets have to be within 60 degrees of one another in what looks like a giant uh, six-pointed star with all the points connecting. Hey, Mary. Hey, Rosa. Hey, Allison. So it's a highly unusual configuration. One grand trine is unusual, and during the 80s, there was this harmonic convergence thing going on. Hey, Allison. Hey, Billy. Um, hey, Mary. Um, That was actually hey, Carol, uh, they did this big worldwide meditation on um, this grand trine, because grand trines mean easy flow, and things are easy for them to happen. Hey, Diana, Trump made her signing debut. Singer, I won't be no, what? That's funny. Hey, Dee. Hey, Michelle. So that's unusual enough, but having two of them is really unusual. In fact, I've never seen it in someone's natal chart. It's and all the years I've been looking at natal charts since the early 90s. It's so unusual that you might see two grand trines, which is highly unusual too, but they're not usually connected to one another like this. So this is a really, really rare event. It's happening yesterday at like I give you guys at the time frame, and it will be happening again today. I can probably figure out what time. So anything you want to put out into the universe, hey Michelle, hey Myra, anything that you want to kind of manifest in your life or you want to kind of put your energy towards, it's easier to start it and get it happening during this period of time. Now, I just want to say that because there's so much not positive news. I'm going to try to see if I can stop the animation here and see when the actual grand trine happens today. The grand sextile, rather. Let me see if I can figure that out here and tell you guys the time frame when that actually does happen. So it's going to happen, it looks like, right around, again, same time, like late around 2. So around 2:40 Central Time till about 3. It starts forming around 2:35, and then it continues on till about 3. So today, that's Central Time till about, yeah, let's see how long it lasts. I should probably just make this go faster because this is annoying. Um, yeah, till about a little after 3. So you have about 20 minutes in there to meditate, to put out your intention for the universe. So if you just calibrate your own, yeah. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Okay. All right. So if you just calibrate your own time, so that means it would happen an hour later on the East Coast, an hour earlier in Mountain Time, and 2 hours early in Pacific Time. And if you're in Europe, I can't help you there. You're gonna have to like figure that out. So, hey Lisa, hey Erica, hey Myra, hey Michelle. So this is a pretty potent day, and this is the day that Baba Vanga. Yesterday was the day that Baba Vanga identified as a time when everything you do was going to be magnified, and so I put out that meditation yesterday. If you don't have anything to do today, do it around that same period of time. Put it on and just kind of do the meditation and visualize peace and harmony for the world and a better world. Um, and also really put some plans of yours in action today to try to kind of visualize what you want for the next, the next few years, the next 10 years. And it's a really good time to do it. Hey, James. Hey, Sandra. Hey, our Santa. Hey, Lisa. So besides that, right, Sharisa, hey, um, what's going on in DC is really, really disturbing. I'm sure you guys have seen that. This is something. Hey, Sharisa. Hey, James. It's something that's pretty hard to look away from because it's basically like tourmaline candles during your Oh, good. That sounds good. Okay. Tourmaline candles. I don't know what those are. Hmm. Hey, Latonia. Uh, the thing about what's going on in DC that kind of freaks me out is, hey, is a lot of the visions that I got back in the spring of 2024 when doing the meditations going into the future, a lot of the really hardcore kind of um, breakdown seemed like it was centered in DC. And the fact that he's putting basically they're under, I mean, sort of light, but they're under like a military style, uh, you know, I can't think of the word. My brain is just gone out. You know what I'm talking about. They're basically under martial law, right? And you can say, oh well, not really, but they are because what they have said is that no kid under the age of 18, so 17 and under, they can't be out on the streets past 8 p.m. till uh, from Friday till like Monday. And if the kid is found out on the streets, then basically the kid will be arrested and the parents will be fined $500. And to me, what if your kid has like a baseball game or something like that, right? Hey, Jasmine. Hey, Ellis. What if your kid is, got some kind of study group at 9 p.m. and they're walking home? There are reasons for kids to be out on the streets. I don't really, I mean, maybe you could drive them in your car. I don't know, but they're doing checkpoints and other things like that. And people are really pissed off in DC, obviously. They did this obviously in Los Angeles. Now they're doing it in DC. And this is just kind of, this is starting to become a pattern, right? Um, I don't know if you also heard that Trump was talking about taking away people's right. I think there's like an open carry if you have a permit in DC, talking about getting rid of that. I think the next step is probably to talk about, I mean, look, you can't have a fascist regime in the United States with people who have arsenals of weapons. So at some point, he's going to have to try to suspend the Second Amendment as well, which when that happens, I think will trigger a whole other backlash against him. Hey, Janine. Hey, Jeannie. Sorry, I thought I misread it. My glasses are kind of foggy. Hey, Jeffrey. My little sister is in graduate school at Georgetown. There he is, upscale, but I am concerned. It's in Georgetown too. Hey, Jeannie. Yeah, it is actually happening in Georgetown. That's another area where I know, um, people are freaking out. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Susan. So, we have it happening now in DC where he's trying to take over. This is, I think, could escalate. Now, I don't know if you heard, but the other thing is he wants to make that into one of those freedom cities, which is basically a Peter Thiel sponsored corporate run, um, little fiefdom. And we'll see. So, Uh, like I said, I have a feeling from looking at how the planets are flowing, right? Uranus is going to move backwards into Taurus. Neptune and Saturn are going to move back into Pisces in the fall. And I think people are going to kind of be confused about how to deal with this and what's really coming. Next year, again, I think people will wake up. Hey, Jasmine. Hey, Irene. Um, and I think when that Mars-Uranus conjunction happens in the 4th house of the U.S. Constitution chart next summer, that is it's going to explode. And I think this is going to be the start of what we're going to feel we're really in it now. So this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, I think. I mean, look, it doesn't have to be this way, right? I mean, um, it didn't have to be this way. And it doesn't have to be this way. And I don't want to make it feel like there is no hope, but I do feel like the way things are going, this is headed towards a really not a good place. Hey, Jasmine, you see the transits agenda, transhumanist agenda moving forward now already, chilling. Transhumanist. Okay, yes. Well, I mean, I think that there's really that's sort of sponsored by the tech bros, so I don't see how we're going to stop that. And certainly this government isn't going to try to put any restrictions against that. I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of things that are really kind of weird in terms of astrologically with the Civil War. Besides the Uranus Mars conjunction that started the Civil War opposing the moon, which we're going to have next year. The progressed sun was actually in Sagittarius on the moon of the Constitution signing chart. And over the next 10 years, our sun will move into Gemini. And remember that the Civil War was about breaking the Union in half. And I am a bit concerned that we might have a two country state if this continues. Deal is so dark. I know he really is, Mystic Mom. I feel like over the next few years, I think the blue states are going to form a coalition and try to stand up to all of this insane stuff going on. And I think, eventually when these sorts of militaristic and really extreme, ICE agents invading people's houses, and eventually I think even the right may feel like they don't want this. But there is a contingency in our country, which we cannot pretend doesn't exist, that seems to be very flirtatious with fascism, and it has been for a long time. And those people generally tend to be the extreme religious people who, I guess, who are indoctrinated into sort of giving away their power and not questioning authority, and who want something, people to tell them what to do and want to just fall in line with that. And I have a worry that even if half of us or most of us evolve and have moved out of that, and even if 80% of the population is kind of done with that there's enough of those people that we're going to have a real problem. And I foresee this going into a violent place, because when you take people's ability to move the government in a civil democracy away, you make revolution and civil war inevitable. If people can't feel like they can influence the political sphere for their benefit, you're going to push people into the place where they have no choice but to fight. And this is kind of, I am worried that with the ICE agents and the, coming and all of this, authoritarianism, and, the United States has been a very independent-minded sort of place where people came here from all over the world and very independent-minded people came here from all over the world trying to kind of be free, make their own way. They don't want people to tell them what to do. They wanna be able to kind of, they have a tendency to be radical, and that's our tradition. So, you take a people like that and try to pound them into a fascist state, and I really don't think, um, once people realize what's going on, that they're going to go along with that. Now, I don't think people have fully comprehended how bad this is gonna get. I think people keep telling themselves things like, "Well, if we win the midterms," or I can tell you, frankly, I don't think there's a political solution to this problem at this point. That ship has sailed, which is why, people got mad at me, back in 2020, but I think the political solution really was in the first couple years of the Trump administration when he should have been impeached, and he would have been taken out of office because he didn't have a lockdown on the Republican Party yet. After that, as we saw, both of those impeachment processes went nowhere. They basically, made it just they meant nothing really. Um, and all they did was further divide the country because the Republicans didn't get on board because 'cause they're too afraid of him. He got locked down on his power. And, you know, since we haven't really been holding our politicians to account, and I mean, this has gotten really, really quite bad, I think, in our lifetime. I mean, Nixon, yes, he resigned. But you look at Reagan, who, had an illegal war going on and funded it through the Contras funded it through, running cocaine into this country, this through the CIA. No accountability there. Then George Bush was torturing people, breaking the Geneva Convention. No accountability there. If we don't hold our leaders accountable, then basically our system's already broken. We've already got a broken system. You've got that going on, plus you've got the Citizens United and that decision to basically allow dark money to just run rampant in our system. Those things basically, we didn't really notice them because everything looks the same, right? Things seem to be chugging along. It's not until it reared up into this situation where we have the most vile expression of, just a crazy malignant narcissist running everything who's completely nuts, that we realized, like, we have Caligula as our president. It's not till we got him that people sort of wake up and go, "Wait, this isn't right." Because all of this stuff was happening subterraneanly if you're not paying attention. If you weren't paying attention to what was going on in the government, you wouldn't have seen this coming, right? So our what I'm saying is the system is very rotten to the core, which is why we're here. It's not just because of Trump. Trump is just a symptom of the disease. He's the tumor on the side of the country, but the cancer is rot all over. He's the thing we can see. What we need to do is we need to really rethink how our democracy functions. And I believe this crisis that's coming, the good point of this is that in order for it to get to a good and better place, a holistic place where we get what we need and what we want for the next however many hundreds of years that this democracy can possibly survive, we need to have the breakdown. It needs to die so that we can rebuild it out of the ashes into something that is an actual pluralistic, true democracy. And we also have to take into account that AI is coming, and we're going to have to restructure our financial systems to be able to account for that. So what I'm saying is it's upsetting, and it's going to be a really weird period of time to live through. But on the other side of this, we have to remember that the universe is letting this happen because there's something innately broken in everything here, and it needs to be fixed. And I'm going to go back and look at everybody's comments and try to answer whatever I can. Okay, so let's see. Perimeter. He's establishing a perimeter attack. That is so weird that you bring that up, Mary, because part of the vision I had, and I don't know if you read that piece I wrote last spring, and then I sort of reconfigured it this year, beginning of the year, was there was like this, and I didn't know what it was, and maybe it was a metaphor, but I saw this like this sort of chemical kind of some kind of chemical barrier put around DC. So I don't know what that if that was a metaphor for that what you're talking about. Let me. I can't. Oh, I hate when this happens. I can't see your comments here. Okay, so that's interesting. I feel like DC is going to be ground zero for a lot of this stuff. That's. I also had visions about skirmishes in Texas between Texas and New Mexico. Don't know what people told me what they thought that meant, but I don't know if it's going to what that's all about. But that's I saw troops along that border. So, besides all the other things that are happening. Okay, so let's see. Back. Okay, it's so dark. Okay, here I'm talking about perimeter. They have invested in retina scan technology already. Wow, that's interesting. And who is they, Jeffrey? Are you talking about the Trump administration? Thinking mentally it has to insulate himself from any action. Yes. Well, I think somebody was saying he's kind of turning the White House into a bunker, and that's why he was on top of the roof. Is he's basically he says he's building a dome up there. I don't know what that's about, but maybe he wants to look like the Kremlin. I don't know. But he basically is you know, reconstructing and maybe fortifying the White House. ICE investing in and retina. Oh, that's creepy. Going to be like China. You're right. That is sort of I think that's one of the templates. My family came here in the 70s to escape the corruption in India, only to face it again here in the US. Hey, Surisha, I know. I know. I I know. It's it's really bad now. It's out of control. In fact, I heard that the tariffs. I don't know if this is. I did not hear this directly from a news source. I heard this secondhand, so I don't know if this is true. So just bear with me here. I heard that people didn't know that there was the tariffs, that the money coming into the country through the tariffs hasn't been accounted for. They don't know where it's going. People don't know where it's going because, of course, it didn't go through the Congress, right? So, is it going into Trump's pocket directly? Is it going into ICE? We don't know. Yeah, yeah. Don't remember has karmic aspects from past lives. Well, I think most people do, but yeah. Um, but yeah, the people that are really dark generally have really, really intense, like nodal things that they have to work through. Hello, Denise. Hey, Mai. AI is here. Yep, that's for sure. Wonder the best possible way to dissolve the Heritage Foundation, which helps support the rise of Trump. Biological warfare. Denise, biological warfare. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that could be what the perimeter was. It felt like it was some kind of chemical weapon that you couldn't permeate because what I saw happening in DC was, and I didn't know what the uniform was, but now it's giving me the chills. Now I know it's the ICE uniform. They were shooting at people there are throngs and throngs of people in DC, which is why every time there's a protest in DC, I get kind of freaked out because it was sort of like just, I can't even tell you how many people on the ground were just sort of invading the Capitol. They were, there's this massive protests. And I saw from the helicopter these guys dressed, now I would say like ICE, in those vests and everything, shooting down at the protesters from above. And that was a really, really disturbing image. And then the next thing I saw was this perimeter of like some kind of chemical weapon put around DC so that you couldn't, I guess, penetrate it. So I guess if you're in DC, I don't, I don't know if that was, like I said, a metaphor or if that was a literal thing, some kind of weapon system put around. But it's very scary. Yeah, I think you're right about the nukes in terms of I think that's coming. I think it's coming down the road if this continues going this direction. Um, because one of the other things that I was shown, and this is the thing that's really freaky, is so we did this meditation in the psychic class, and we went forward in time, and I got that information, a bunch of other stuff, and one of the things that came up with everybody in the class was the East Coast having some kind of attack, like a missile sort of attack. It was everyone saw this big blast with all this white smoke, and depending on who it was, some people saw it in Boston, some people saw it in New York, some people saw it in New Jersey. I saw it kind of between New York and New Jersey, and kind of this big white plume of smoke going down the East Coast. Um, but I was told in the vision that it was actually not us. That wasn't like a homegrown terrorist thing. It was actually an attack from Russia. It was a Russian missile, at least. That's all I know. I thought it was probably Russia itself, and that it was being lobbed at us while we were in the midst of all of this civil war stuff, where people were fighting each other, were trying to wrench control of the government. And this was sort of I don't know what happened after that. I just saw that, and I thought, I kind of came out of it because it was very startling, and we started talking about it, and it was weird that everyone else got that same piece of information. So that tells me when you get a piece of information like that, that's a plan. That's a plan that's already in play, because the future isn't entirely set, right? So, depending on what the decisions we make, different things will come to pass, and we can sort of avoid certain things. But, um, but whenever you see something like when I saw the Russian troops all in their winter uniforms back like in the late summer, early fall of, um, of 2021, and then about 6 months later, or like by the Christmas, January time, they started amassing the troops at the Ukrainian border, and I knew when I saw the troops that meant that there was an invasion coming for a neighboring country, and so when they moved the troops to Ukraine, I'm like, well, they're going to invade Ukraine. Um, so I got that information because that decision was probably made around that time, and they started preparing to do that. I think that's how a lot of this works. Is a possibility pops up into the universe, and if it's not, if people don't change their mind or something doesn't shift it, it comes to pass. So the fact that that thing was happening, that we all got that, seems to me like it's a decision that's already been made by someone like Putin to do that, to take advantage of our unrest and our civil, issues, all the things that are going to be going on, all the chaos, and try to, escalate it to another level and do it in a military way, which we've never seen happen before. So, um, we'll see if that really happens, because if we can wrench this out of the control of, if we can manage to, I don't know how we're going to do that, but if we can manage to sort of be aware, I mean, this is the thing that makes us so vulnerable too. And this is something that if you think about this, it's pretty scary. Okay. I don't want to scare you too much, but, um, we were sort of the for a long time, our country was sort of you know, our money was the standard. We would sort of go into different countries, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, we would interfere with other people's governments, and we're sort of the last empire, really the last empire. And now China is becoming an empire again, and BRICS is happening, and I know Richard Wolff was really freaked out that Indonesia joined BRICS, and they're building a coalition that is basically going to usurp the dollar. I don't think he's thinking broad enough myself. I think he's right in that it's not a great sign. You can tell that the consolidation of powers between, Indonesia and India and China and Russia isn't great for our country and for Europe. And it isn't necessarily, we don't really want to see authoritarianism sort of spread throughout the world. I don't think most people want to live in authoritarian nations. But I think the thing he isn't thinking about is I think there's a very good chance that as AI really evolves over the next 10 to 15 years, that we are talking about really a massive collapse of the economic systems we already have. So they can configure everything they want, but I don't think it's going to work out the way that is intended either. So I think, that's a more traditional model of thinking about it as the dollar and blah, blah, blah. And this is how it's been. And we're going to change it to the whatever, uh, whatever currency they decide to sort of move things to. That may affect things and that won't be great for us, but I don't think that system itself will be able to stay in play either because there is so much change coming with technology and that this paradigm is so different that I just don't think people can even conceive of how different it's going to be. And I don't think these leaders really fully understand. And I mean, we've got that and climate change. I mean, it's 107 degrees outside here, which that's totally crazy. And it's, we have the weather changing. We have all this stuff happening. And instead of fighting one another, we really should be trying to help one another and getting together and trying to solve our problems. But here we are figuring out how to divide and conquer each other. And this is the total wrong approach, but this is what's happening. Okay. A tariff, well, Norway, Philippines price not awarded. I think you're probably right, Jeffrey. Tariff money is probably going to, yep, I think it probably is. I got logged out. Hope I am logging in now. It seems like you are, Jasmine. I must have deja vu of you talking about tariffs, a dream I had in 2018. Well, I don't know if I think he might have been talking about it back then, but I don't know if I think he did talk about it a lot in his first term, but I don't know if he got to implement them as much as he wanted to because he had normal people around him that stopped him. Zuckerberg owns all of Palo Alto and underground the city is a bunker. They have to know it's coming. Yeah, I agree with you, Jeffrey. I agree that the tariff funds are being used as as at its discretion. He was saying how he's paying for all this. Huh. The ballroom is being paid by him. I think he considers tariff money as his money. Huh. That makes sense, Irene. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Bonnie, I do believe he is putting so much money in ICE to build his own personal military for, yes, when U.S. forces start to splinter from his role. I 100% agree with you, Bonnie. I think that's exactly what ICE is all about. It's kind of his Gestapo, right? It's his SS. He knows that our military has been trained to follow the Constitution. If they follow illegal orders, they can get in trouble. They're trained that way. So not all of them are going to go along with this forever. They might see how it goes. And if it starts to shoot protesters, they're probably not, most of them wouldn't do that. But ICE, who are ill-trained believers in Trump, his sort of loyalists, they would do stuff like that. The East Coast is home to many chemical plants. Huh. It could be an industrial accident. Senior describing could be. In the vision, it was I saw a helicopter pouring this liquid in a perimeter. So I don't know what that's all about. According to the late Bamba Vanga, there will be a civil war in the USA and Russia will attack really? And China, the West Coast. Wow. America will prevail, but she will never be a world power again. Yes, that makes sense. Ooh, I'm getting the chills. Wow. Because I've had a lot of when I lived in the West Coast, I had tons and tons of visions about being attacked by a nuclear weapon when I lived back there, and it freaked me out. I can't even tell you how many of them I had. It terrified me. So I think that sounds about right. And since China and Russia, I think, are going to build a real, not just a financial coalition, I think they're going to, I've had some other things, visions about them kind of integrating their powers, and not just being also a military, some kind of military alliance. I could see that. I mean, The big ugly bill boosted the military and or CIA budget to the most of all departments. Meanwhile, cuts in other budgets of health, which Kennedy is slated to disappear, boosted the military and our CIA budget to the most. Yes. Well, yeah, I know that they cut Medicare, Medicaid, and they're going to try to cut Social Security too. That's coming. Do you think blue states will stop spending federal tax dollars to them? Yes, I do. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. At some point, I think the blue states will say, give the big old FU to the federal government and say, and they will intercept the federal dollars. They'll find a way. They'll pass some kind of bill or some kind of law that says all tax collection has to go to the state first. And they will start to intercede and take the money for the federal government, and they will form their own coalition, and they will probably decide to sort of knit together their own. And that, I think, to be honest, if there is going to be a play that is nonviolent, that is probably the smartest one, because by the blue states not paying their taxes, that will pretty much disable a lot of the federal government. It will collapse a lot of the financial, the spending on military, all of the stuff that Trump has at his ready right now. It will create incredible debt and cause the federal government to potentially collapse if the blue states don't pay their taxes anymore. So I think if I were a blue state governor, that would be my first move. It would be even more important than this whole gerrymandering thing, which I feel like is a pie in the sky kind of attempt to try to rectify something that should have been done a long time ago. And it's a little too late. I mean, it's great, it's performative, it makes us feel good, but I don't think it's going to do anything, because from what I've read, even if every blue state were to gerrymander so there's more Democrats, the Republican states, if they do it, they still will win. So it's sort of again going into the weeds and not looking at the big picture. The big picture is you want to starve the federal government. And the real way to collapse this authoritarian regime is to financially starve it so that there is no other money coming in. So we can't pay ICE people. So we can't pay, all these people. The reason these people are doing it, and if he collapses, the other thing I'm worried about is if he collapses the economy, which I think he's on really fucking track to do, that will make more people who are desperate, and then he'll be able to, I think this is, I don't know if he's smart enough to figure that out, but if we have a lot of desperate people who can't feed their families and ICE is paying a lot of money, then people might sign up for ICE and join ICE because they can't afford not to, right? So I think the best play for the Democrats is not to think so small, because the time to think like that would have been 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. And, Biden should have passed a law outlawing gerrymandering. He should have, changed the rules of the Supreme Court, he should have been doing those things immediately as he came into office. He should have been trying to fix the problems of the democracy if we were going to avoid this. But he didn't, and I'm not, he didn't. I don't blame him. If we had Bernie, that probably would have happened. I think we would have avoided this if Bernie would have won. But the problem there was the Democrats and the Republicans both have this they're sort of locked in this paradigm, and they won't get out of it. And you needed something really truly from the outside, not Trump, but somebody who could really reform the system. And no, the Democrats had no real desire to do that either, because it suited them as well. They're empowered. Why would they want to change that? So I think, unfortunately, the time for a lot of these things have passed. Now we're in we're no longer in a real democracy. We're in what I would consider to be like a faux democracy, kind of like Hungary or something like that. And that dream I had about being on an airplane to Hungary back in November. This is, we're here. We're in Hungary now. We're not in a regular civil democracy. We're in a corrupted, kleptocratic, authoritarian, faux democracy. And they'll, if the 2026 midterms, I mean, people are fighting over that and everything, and they're doing all this sort of hoopla about it, pretending like the system still it has some kind of ability to change this. I don't think it does, because even if the 2026 elections were to happen, which they could be thwarted easily by an authoritarian person like Trump, he could just say, decide to say that we're at war with whoever and suspend the elections because we're in a wartime and we can't have an election. Or he could get his buddy, some other Peter Thiel style or some other tech bro to try to, falsify the election results, which, I mean, Putin does all the time. And all these faux democracies, they fake elections constantly. And maybe there's not enough time to get it done, and that's why they're freaking out about 2026, but I doubt that. And I think this is all sort of performative a little bit, and it makes us feel like there's something political that can be done, when in reality, this is not a political problem at this point. This is a bigger problem than that. We're not in a civil society anymore. So once you leave a civil society where people's voices and ideas can be heard and people respond to it, and you're no longer in like a democratic civil society, and you enter into an authoritarian state like we're in, there's only one way out of that, and that is people have to show up. Lots and lots of people have to show up and say no. And the only thing that the really the blue states, the actual Democrats can do now, is to basically decide to shore up their own states, get together, starve the government of its funding, and come up with a coalition between them and figure out how to kind of create resistance. If they do that, that would be a whole other set of issues, right? That would probably result in probably some kind of military thing as well. But if the federal government doesn't have the funding and most of the military is on the side of the blue states, we could eventually maybe leverage that power of the blue states and use that to rewrite and rethink the Constitution and kind of eliminate a lot of the problems that we have. It's this encroachment of the super, this sort of fascistic thing as creeping in for generations, really. And it could be sort of weeded out at the roots. But we'd have to really have a movement as human people. We have to come together and demand that, that this new nation really represents us, and we have to be part of it. So I think really it's going to have to be some combination of us waking up and demanding change. And I don't mean it like just, doing it on Facebook or whatever. I mean us really being in the streets and demanding change, which may also result in people being hurt. And also, and the blue states saying, no, this is not our values. We're not going to participate in this, and starving the federal government until basically it collapses and we have to reinstall some new kind of government. I think that's the only play forward now. I really do. I don't think that any of these other things are going to work. And so we are basically now careening towards a civil war, whether it's not going to be exactly like the last civil war, but we are careening in that direction. And this is what I was hoping back in 2018 we could avoid, when I was saying that if, Trump had to be impeached, he had to be impeached. And if he was impeached in the first 2 years, we would have other problems, but we would still have hope that we could fix this politically. Well, we don't. And it's not just Trump, because Trump was not impeached. He was not taken out of, and that is because the system is so corrupted. So it's not a mistake either. So I just want to say that if we had people in our government who weren't already being paid off and corrupted, due to dark money being in our system through you know, which John McCain was trying to reverse that, but, that never happened. If we didn't have that, then we would have had people who stood up to this because they would have felt they had to because they were not being bought out by fascist corporations. Because you know what fascism, the definition of fascism is a merger of corporate and state power. That is literally the definition of it. And so fascism has been an undercurrent in our government for a long time. It's just it got to the place where they got their institutions and their think tanks and they started seeding it all through, they took their lessons from the 60s where the left managed to kind of break through and, the professors and, institutions started to change because people wanted change. You got, you know, judges who got appointed who were more liberal because that was a reflection of people's values, right? Because the people were still somewhat in control of things. And then, the right saw that and said, we have to counter this. We have to have think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and others. And we have to basically, put our people that have our values, our fascistic authoritarian values, we have to put them in judgeships. We have to basically put money into people, run them for state senator, for representatives. And we need to take control of it. And we need to gerrymander these states so that basically we can win because this is not the values of the American public for the most part. It's not the majority, but we're going to wrest control away from the people and we're going to do it systematically. And they have been doing it systematically since really the 80s. And this is the result. We're here now because no one countered it. And everybody knew it was happening. And this is just the ultimate sort of place for it. I mean, people did try, certain people. McCain was one, Bernie Sanders was another, Elizabeth Warren. There's been people, AOC, there's good people who've been trying to rail against this and trying to stop it. But they're basically like me, like the Cassandras in the dark screaming at nothing and nobody's listening. So this is just a force that is so, and maybe it's cosmic. We can make that argument because, like you said, Bama Vanga saw this civil war is coming. I had visions of it when I was a child, when I was um, stuck in my bed in 7th grade, laying on my back. I kept seeing warplanes and over the United States and conflicts and people crying and screaming. It was horrible. I had visions of it back then, and I was 11, 12 years old. So this may not be something that could have stopped. Maybe this is part of the karma, because if you look at the astrology, it certainly seems to be that we need to break this in order to have something better. And I agree with Baba Vanga, because that's been my feeling this whole time, is this is the end of the American empire. It is the absolute end of the American empire. We will never be an empire again, which is not a bad thing, I have to say. Not necessarily a bad thing. We can just, on the other side of this, reconfigure ourselves to be more of a liberal democracy that has some kind of social network, because we're going to need that with AI. We're going to need to think about how do we feed people? How do we have this new economy? And we could be very happy just being, Finland or something like that. We don't need to be the kings of the world. In fact, I don't think it's a great position to be in. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing that we're no longer an empire. I think it could be a positive thing that we could be just another tapestry part, another piece of the quilt, of the world, and not try to lead it. But we're going to have we have a lot of work to do. And this is kind of, we are in a big transitional phase. And I know it's a bummer that we have to go through it, but you got to remember the last Civil War too. A lot of people died. I'm not going to lie to you, but they were all military people, hundreds of thousands of people. More Americans died in the Civil War than any other war. However, still, most people didn't, right? And most people, they had to deal with the ramifications of the Civil War. They had to deal with, the tearing apart. And the stories of the Civil War are almost identical to the stories now, where families were torn apart, where, um, you know, somebody be on the side of the North and another person be on the side of the South, and they would never talk to each other again. And they would, the families broke apart over those issues, just like what's happening now. Because these values are more than just values, right? I mean, to want to harm and hurt other people is such a fundamentally evil thing to do that you can't just look away when somebody says, "Yeah, I'm totally down with like people who are of color being thrown into concentration camps." I love that. If you can't be friends with someone like that, you can't have that person as your parent and have a relationship with them. In my opinion, that is a boundary that can't be crossed, because those are just that is some kind of mental sickness, and that is just evil. It's just wrong. And so that's what they were dealing with back in the Civil War. Okay, I'm going to read your comments now, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I'm getting it's going is rewriting the Constitution. Time to yes, thank you, Irene. Exactly. That is what I want to really put out there for everybody to think about that. And I keep saying this, but I feel like you know, I really want people to think about that and kind of start to think about what's the best version. And then we should definitely have a conversation about that. We can do it here. We can do it on a Zoom call or something like that. But people need to think about this because, look, we are the ones with the power. We have the power. This is all just a bullshit game. I'm just saying. All of this it's real. We live having to deal with other people imposing their will on us. But at the end of the day, people have power. All of us have power, and we can envision a better world. And we can if we put and we have an idea of what that world is going to be, and we crystallize it, and we are willing to kind of put it forward, and it catches the imagination of other people, that is how things change. It's not just, fighting against something doesn't really work. You have to fight for something. And we need to fight for something. We need to fight for equality and justice for all people. We need to fight for a better world for our kids. And we need to fight for a clean world and a world where we figure out ways to mitigate climate change and AI. We need to fight for that stuff. But just worrying about all of these dumb, and because I feel like a lot of this stuff with what's going on politically, it's just a sideshow. I mean, it's just kind of getting people to think about this for a minute and think about that and get worked up about Jeffrey Epstein and get worked up about that and get worked. It's just a ping pong game of attention span so that you don't look at the big picture, that you don't think about what they're doing, which is they're wresting away control of the democracy, and they are basically, resting, and they're basically creating a situation which this is going to lead to instability, war, not just here, but around the world. This is a really, really bad track we're on. So um, we have to kind of do the thing that everybody's been talking about for, the new age people have been saying, right? Instead of it being like, you're just going to, this is the thing this is what I just want to say about that, because there's truth to the fact that if you imagine and you visualize and you put your energy and you collectively um, have a vision for the world, that you can manifest it. That's what happens. It's happened throughout history many, many times. Do I believe that one person can sit there in their pajamas and get and visualize everything they want to happen and have it happen? No, because you are in a tapestry of we are all co-creative beings. You can't impose your will over all the 8 billion people on the planet. We have to come together as somewhat of a majority, even if we had 10 or 20% or 30% of the people who could envision this and maybe would grow to 40 or 50, we could tip it over into this new space. So they're not wrong in that a new earth could be created, but it isn't going to happen magically. It's going to happen with our hard work and our sweat and tears. And we're going to have to let the old world die for the new one to be born. But we can make the new world with our imagining and with all of our dreams and visions of the positive, perfect world that we want. May not be exactly, it may not manifest exactly as we expect, but we can certainly try to put together something for everyone to really visualize, and some kind of replacement of this system that we have right now that's better. A much more, we don't need a freaking electoral college. I think we need some kind of grid-like sort of system rather than anything that can be manipulated. I mean, now that we have computers, maybe you could use algorithms to tell how many people live in certain areas and just put a grid pattern over it so that there's no gerrymandering. There needs to be some kind of, we need to have some kind of universal income. We need to think about AI coming in. We need to be able to regulate that. There's so many things that are really specific and easy to think about. But the broader things that we need to think about is we need to really lock down some of the things like cleaning up our world, figuring out how to totally get rid of. I mean, that's another thing. The oil and gas industry has basically put us in this position where they've known for, like, I don't even know how long. They, like cigarettes, they've known for generations that what they were spewing and what they were doing was going to end up in this situation where we're in a climate catastrophe. And yet the greed is so great that they don't want to change it. Well, if we usurp and we overthrow this established order, which is coming, then we can just say, fuck that. We are putting in green. Everything is going to be green. We're going to figure out how to solve our energy problems in a completely different way. I think the thing is that you have to focus on right now is this world that we live in, this paradigm is going to end and a new one is going to be being born. What is born is up to us. That's the part we're here for, I believe. I believe that most of us came here because there's so many star seeds and spiritual people and highly evolved being people, and so many people have had really intense spiritual awakenings and are attuned to the higher energies. We're here so that we can manifest something better for everybody. And we have to get together and figure out how to put that into the universe and how to think about. I don't think any one of us is going to solve it completely by ourselves. I think we all have to kind of imagine, and we have to come together and talk about it. And just like what happened the last time the democracy was born, people started talking to each other and deciding what they felt like needed to be part of the democracy. We need to do that now. And we need to think about what is the new country going to be when all of this is over. Because if we don't have an idea or a plan, my fear is that the US could go into a kind of a collapse state, which would be very bad. And if we do have a vision for the future, which I believe we are capable of easily of coming up with, then it can be, we may not be bossing the world around, but we could have a beautiful, amazing country, and potentially, at some point, maybe the rest of the world, we can find some kind of way to, um, I mean, I don't know if, to be honest, I'm not sure if there will be even empires as there have been. I don't even know that China or Russia or any of those countries will manage to survive this either. It's just that ours will collapse, and I think those others will collapse eventually as well. I don't have the feeling that uh, with AI and climate change that you're going to be able to sustain these kind of ridiculous paradigms anymore. So, um, at some point, the world is going to change pretty radically. I think it will end up being what I foresee down the road is more of I think it will be more like city states, more like smaller communities of people living in, in democratically run sort of almost communistic sort of situations where people will, sort of do a job or something like that, but there'll probably be AI to do a lot of it. And that those will proliferate around the world at some point because I think we and we're going to have to figure out something with climate change coming too. We might need to build artificial environments or something like that to sort of survive climate change. I don't know, but that's what I keep being shown is there's sort of a lot of the earth is sort of is rural, and there's areas where people are populated. Um, and I just think those places are going to be um, more like tribes than they sort of with technology. So and tribal culture was, everyone shared everything. Um, that is probably the closest thing to a true democracy that we could have because if you live in a small setting, pretty much you live in some kind of city state where you have like 5,000 people, pretty much everyone will know each other. And maybe there's bad things about that, but there's good things in that people will, you'll know, everybody will know what everybody is good at and that everybody will contribute in their own way. Um, I think there's going to have to be systems where people figure out how to uh, sustain themselves without having jobs. But what I'm talking about, these city states they're way further in the future, and I feel like they may not even all be here on Earth. Some of them might be on other planets, but I think humanity will survive. But the next step for us as a country is to think about the country that we most want to see come out of the rubble of this because it's headed that direction. I don't see any other way around this, and I hate to bum everyone out, but that's the reality of it. Okay, let's see if anybody has anything to say here, and I will call it. Okay, um, Putin's feet were. I think it's also interesting under him yesterday. Like, it is not well. You know what is interesting that Jasmine that you bring Putin up because if you noticed, you're welcome, Teresa. They did this during the exact period when Baba Vanga, this on the 15th, when Baba Vanga said it was a day where regular people could change and influence the future. And they did it actually right at the time when that grand sextile was happening. So I think Putin is very well aware of that. So I guess I'll leave it at that, you guys. It was great seeing you guys. Lots of love and do your meditations. Think about some of the stuff. Think about the world that you want your kids and grandkids to see and live in and what you want for your future and write it down. Start writing it down. Maybe make a Substack or contact me and tell me some of your ideas. I'd love to hear from you guys and let's keep this dialogue going and you can post your ideas on my Substack. You can write me, you can email me, you can text me or whatever. You can find my number on my website. And let's just kind of start thinking about some of this stuff and envisioning positive things because I think that's going to be the way that we get out of this negative period is by envisioning something better. All right. Lots of love to you guys. Oh, hey, Tiffany. Thank you guys for coming and showing up every week. Blessings to all of you. You're in my prayers. Have a great, yes, they do me. All right. God bless you all. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.